Donald Trump earns his place in history.
I'm so proud to be your nominee for President of the United States.
We have team coverage from the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Lacking in diversity, concerns over this year's group of GOP delegates. Cleaning up from a failed coup. Turkey cracks down on thousands accused of complicity to overthrow the government. And World Youth Day. Pope Francis sends a message to Poles and pilgrims to Krakow. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, July 20th, 2016.
If you do what you love, hold nothing back, and never let fear of failure get in the way, then you pretty much figured out the Trump formula.
Donald Trump's children step into the limelight as he wins the Republican nomination. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick in Washington, along with our political team at the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Jason Calvi will tell us about the push to reassure social conservatives, but first, our political director, Lauren Ashburn.
The Donald is in Cleveland, Brian. His plane landed this afternoon with the Pence family meeting him on the tarmac. Ted Cruz was giving a speech at the time and laughed as the plane interrupted him. Other news coming out of the convention, Melania Trump's speechwriter admitted a mistake in copying part of Michelle Obama's speech. And Donald Trump says she will not be fired. Up tonight, Eric Trump, who previewed his speech by saying he'll fight by his father's side until November, is expected to be a hit, as was Donald Jr. last night. Will also be there, he says, on the campaign trail, and his goal tonight is to give a peek into Trump's personal life as an amazing father, saying, you know what? You can't script emotion.
Congratulations, Dad. We love you.
It was his son, Donald Trump Jr., who officially put his father over the top during roll call.
The great state of Connecticut, Kansas.
The great state of New Mexico.
After a bruising primary campaign, the delegates rallied behind the winner, who addressed the crowd via video from New York City.
This is a movement, but we have to go all the way. I'm so proud to be your nominee.
The Trump campaign, trying to get back on track after a rocky start to this convention, focused on jobs and the economy. Donald Trump Jr. touted his father's business record.
His true gift as a leader is that he sees the potential in people that they don't even see in themselves.
New Jersey Governor Chris Christie put Hillary Clinton on trial with his speech.
Hillary Clinton, as a failure for ruining Libya and creating a nest for terrorist activity by ISIS. Answer me now, is she guilty or not guilty?
And House Speaker Paul Ryan spoke of unity, hoping to bring his party together.
Fellow Republicans, what we have begun here, let's see this thing through. Let's win this thing. Let's show America our best and nothing less.
Up next, Vice Presidential nominee Mike Pence talks tonight with Trump's big speech on Thursday. And Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio will also speak to the crowd. Joining us right now, Alfonso Aguilar, appointed by former President George W. Bush to be the first chief of the U.S. Office of Citizenship. He's now president of Latino Partnership for Conservative Principles. Phew, that was a lot. Star Parker, founder and president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, a frequent guest. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you much for having us.
So the number of African-American delegates, Star, you've written a piece about this, for the entire, out of the 2,400 or so that are here, is 18. Why is that? Why do you think that we are seeing a low number? In 2004, it was 164.
Well, in 2004, there was, and up until that time, a lot of work was done within the Republican Party to reach out to the black community, to go inside and say that our values are your values. They knew that this is the most church community in the country, but yet they were voting for big government, which is inconsistent with the very scriptures that they were hearing on Sunday morning. That is not what is happening right now in this new secular environment, this secular overtake of the Republican Party. It is very hard then to make the case into that wing of the black community that would want to hear the message of freedom.
Secular overtake. I think that might be in conflict with what we're hearing, but we can get back to that in just a second. The numbers are equally as disturbing for Hispanics, especially this year with all of the talk about the wall and immigration.
Right.
Hispanic Catholics largely favor Hillary Clinton 3-1. That's 77% to 16%. Why? Is it immigration? Is it the wall?
Well, partly it's immigration, certainly, but frankly, we haven't done our job. Ronald Reagan used to say Hispanics are conservative, but they just don't know it. And he didn't mean it in a condescending way. He meant that if we engage them, they're going to respond favorably. They are conservative. They're pro-life. They believe in the family. But we have to engage them, and we're not showing up in the community. If we tell them what Hillary Clinton stands for, that she wants to do away with restrictions to federal funding to Planned Parenthood, an organization that's targeting Latinos, 22% of all abortions today are performed on Latina women. Latina women are victims of democratic policies. They will respond, but we have to engage them. And hopefully we'll have time to make that case.
You know, Hillary Clinton has a 19% lead among Catholics who attend Mass weekly, Star. I know you're converting. And yet you're saying that the party is very secular while we're seeing one of the most conservative platforms we've ever seen. Why do you think it is?
Well, the platform is conservative because the people that are on the platform committees are conservatives, and they had a battle. When you think about the leadership of the Republican Party right now with the Trump nomination, it is secular. So as Alfonso is saying, we are going to have to make a special case on issues. We are going to have to make sure that these minority communities understand what is at stake when they vote for liberals, not just the Supreme Court, but to entrench abortion. The Catholics need to understand this. When you say you are pro-life and you look at numbers, for instance, in 2005, black abortion numbers were 684,000 in that 1 year alone. Once you start revealing what Hillary Clinton and her party represent, I think that you'll start seeing some people vote their values.
And that's what a lot of Catholics say. This is about pro-life, mostly about pro-life. Right. All right, Brian, coming up later, we'll talk to Representative Virginia Foxx about this socially conservative platform, the most in GOP history, and we'll have our political panel. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for that dynamic discussion, Lauren Ashburn. Meanwhile, other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. Turkey expands its sweeping crackdown on the media, the military, and universities. President Erdogan continues his purge after a failed coup. Wyatt Gould reports.
Brian, the Turkish government is revoking the licenses of 21,000 teachers at private schools and firing or detaining half a dozen university presidents. The crackdown is raising concerns about the loss of basic freedoms, and yet the president still has plenty of supporters. Hundreds of Erdogan supporters in Turkey's capital are demanding those behind the military coup be put on trial. Police have arrested or detained 9,000 people, including 115 generals, for alleged involvement in the failed coup attempt. But the crackdown extends far beyond the military. The chairman of the Istanbul's Education and Science Workers Union is speaking out after thousands of teachers lost their licenses. He says the teachers should be investigated first, then if they are found guilty, fired. Dr. Mustafa Gorbuz, a Middle East politics expert, says the crackdown is a witch hunt, which the president is using for political gain.
He is so much focused on real or imagined enemies. And you know, there is kind of paranoia going on.
The European Union is urging respect for democratic principles, but those calls appear to go unanswered. Counterterrorism expert Dr. Sebastian Gorka says it's a step in the wrong direction for the key NATO ally.
The loss of Turkey to an Islamist government, the jailing of thousands of people, judges included, senior military officers, journalists, that does not bode well for the future.
Gorka says the Obama administration has refused to play hardball with Erdogan. His prediction, things are going to get worse.
And he will now take down anybody he thinks is a potential threat to him. So yes, he will now ratchet up his Islamization of the nation in a response to this failed coup.
The situation in Turkey has had economic fallout. S&P has downgraded its credit rating into junk status, citing the failed coup as well as political turmoil. Plus, they say further downgrades are possible. Brian.
Thank you, Wyatt Gould. And the first funeral connected with Sunday's fatal ambush of Baton Rouge police will be held on Friday. Bishop Robert Munch plans a special Mass Sunday to pray for that community's healing.
No word could adequately express the grief, horror, and tragedy this has caused us individually and communally.
Bishop Munch remembering the 3 officers who died during daily Mass Tuesday at St. Joseph Cathedral, where Sunday's Mass will also be celebrated. Pope Francis takes inspiration from St. John Paul II as he prepares to visit Krakow for World Youth Day.
Tutto sarà nel segno della misericordia. In quest'anno giubilare e nella memoria grata e devota di San Giovanni Paolo II.
The Pope saying that his visit to Poland will be inspired by mercy in the memory of St. John Paul II, who instituted World Youth Day. Francis sent a video message to Poles and pilgrims who will converge on Krakow next week. The Polish Bishops' Conference looks forward to hosting the Holy Father for World Youth Day. We caught up with their spokesman today at the Vatican.
The Pope Francis will find very hospitable, very warm, and very young Poland. But at the same time, he will find Poland which has very strong connection with him through divine mercy.
Poland is adding extra security to protect the Pope and the pilgrims. With so many people attending from around the world, this is a huge challenge. Alan Holdren, Rome Bureau Chief for EWTN's Catholic News Agency, is joining us. Alan, how many pilgrims are expected in Krakow for World Youth Day?
Well, Brian, we've got about 350,000 registered pilgrims from throughout the world, but they're expecting about 1.5 to 1.8 million pilgrims, we heard today. Of those, 30,000 are from the United States. It's the most represented country from anywhere outside of Europe.
And you're traveling with the Holy Father. What would you say are the most anticipated aspects of this trip?
Well, Brian, you know, anytime the Holy Father is with big groups and with young people, he's at his best, and we've got all of that there at World Youth Day. We'll see him with these young people in his element. We'll see a lot of love there, I think. He's also going to have some very serious events. He's going to Auschwitz and Birkenau, these 2 concentration camps, where he'll also be meeting with survivors.
And what is the Vatican saying about World Youth Day security?
They say they're tranquil about it. They don't have any reason for particular concern, is what Father Lombardi, the Vatican spokesman, told us today. He said that he hopes that everything goes well.
Of course, the State Department does warn Americans who are going to World Youth Day to be extra careful in light of what's been going on in Europe recently. We appreciate Alan Holdren from EWTN's Catholic News Agency joining us from Rome. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Brian.
Coming up, we follow up on a tragedy at Disney World, why a Catholic family will not file a lawsuit. And back to the Republican National Convention, what social conservatives expect from Donald Trump. Thanks for joining us this Wednesday evening for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. The parents of a toddler killed by an alligator at a Walt Disney World resort say they will not sue Disney. Matt and Melissa Graves, parishioners at St. Patrick Church in Elkhorn, Nebraska, say they must focus on their family's future health. The parents describe themselves as broken by the death of their 2-year-old son, Lane. An alligator attacked the boy June 14th near a Disney resort hotel. His body was recovered the following day. After Lane's death, Disney World made changes, limiting possible visitor contact with alligators on its property. Donald Trump earns the Republican nomination, but has yet to convince some social conservatives. Political Director Lauren Ashburn continues our team coverage from the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. Lauren?
Brian, the never Trump part of the Republican Party couldn't derail the Trump train from cruising into the nomination. Since it became clear in the spring that Trump would likely be the nominee, conservatives used social media, conference calls, and emails to plot a way to stop him. Our Jason Calvi has been talking to some leading social conservatives who have been among those whose first choice was not Trump. Jason?
Lauren, Christian conservatives are speaking on this stage tonight in what they say could convince the Trump skeptics to support Donald Trump. All eyes will be on Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who has yet to support Donald Trump. We're also going to hear tonight from the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, who I caught up with last night.
There's a lot of social conservatives that are still worried about Donald Trump. What do you say to them tonight?
I think a huge sign in picking Mike Pence. He's a great friend, a great ally, someone who shares our values, a full spectrum conservative. And I think when you look at things like the Supreme Court a few weeks ago, real concerns about how radical the Supreme Court, how activist the court would be under a President Hillary Clinton. We can't have that. The list that Donald Trump put out, all 11, are people that would be well respected.
That's an important issue for Pam from Montana.
Is that they can look at what the alternative will be if Donald Trump doesn't get it. We're going to lose our Supreme Court. Definitely lose it.
We talked with pro-lifers meeting today on the sidelines of the convention. Franciscan University student Tommy Valentine is a Virginia delegate. He and other conservatives failed to change the convention rules so delegates could vote for the candidate of their choice.
I'm 22 years old. I've been a Republican longer than Donald Trump has, so I'm skeptical of him. He's flip-flopped on every issue under the sun.
But leading evangelical Tony Perkins says Trump is listening.
I think he's trying to pull people in around him that can give him good counsel. So I cannot guarantee what he's going to do in his administration, but I'll have to say he's made a lot of the right moves, and I'm optimistic.
Perkins, who fights for the traditional family, says that Donald Trump met the 3 requirements that conservatives had of him. 1, that he pick a conservative running mate. 2, that he pick Supreme Court justices that are also conservative. And 3, that he not water down the party platform. Lauren?
Thanks, Jason. There are some startling statistics about abortion from Pew Research. The issue falls at the bottom of 14 total concerns. North Carolina Representative Virginia Foxx chairs the Republican Platform Committee. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
This is one of the most socially conservative platforms we've seen, especially the abortion plank, where we've seen the call for the ban for dismemberment. As a Catholic, why do you think this is?
Well, I think as a Catholic, it is very important that we honor life at all stages. And we have learned more and more about this horrendous practice that is going on, not just through Planned Parenthood, but other organizations that perform abortions where they dismember babies in the womb, and it's a horrific way to do that.
Do you think that this will change the hearts and minds of those Republicans who are pro-abortion?
I think the more that's revealed about the selling of body parts of unborn babies, yes, the more it will change their hearts.
The platform also blasts the president's transgender bathroom directive, and your state provoked that national debate. Do you plan to stand up to President Obama's directive?
Well, we blast the president's overreach again of the Constitution. He's constantly overreaching in terms of doing things he is not authorized to do by the Constitution. And that's what he's done in ordering the Department of Education to do things it should not be doing. The transgender bathroom issue in North Carolina is one, again, of constitutional sovereignty, constitutional separation of powers. Counties and towns in North Carolina do not have the right to do what the Charlotte City Council did, and the legislature in North Carolina had to assert the Constitution of North Carolina, and that's what it did.
We saw today, we'll switch to pornography. Starbucks and McDonald's have banned the ability for people to get pornography. The platform calls pornography a public health crisis. Why is that language important?
Because we believe, and research shows, that using and participating in pornography leads to even worse behaviors on people's part. We believe it leads to sex trafficking, and it is a gateway to lots of other bad behavior. And so we wanted to take a strong stand against pornography. It's, again, a denigration of life, and it's also particularly a denigration of women.
Thank you so much, Representative Virginia Foxx, North Carolina. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, remembering a legendary Hollywood director. The man who brought us Happy Days has died. And more analysis from the Republican National Convention in Cleveland. We're grateful you can join us for EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. He created and directed Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy. Writer-director Gary Marshall has died at a hospital in Burbank, California. He was 81 and suffered complications from pneumonia following a stroke. He once said in an interview that humor was his necessary path in life. Award-winning director Ron Howard, who starred in Happy Days, remembers Marshall's mantra: life is more important than show business. Speakers at the Republican National Convention go right after Hillary Clinton. Political director Lauren Ashburn continues our team coverage from Cleveland. Lauren?
Brian, the rhetoric on both sides of the political aisle has been overly heated this election season, and we're going to talk about that right now. Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner, Melinda Hennenberger, editor-in-chief of Roll Call. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the tenor of this. Last night we saw Chris Christie. He laid out his case against her, asking the crowd guilty or not guilty to the chants of lock her up, lock her up. Ben Carson later connected Hillary Clinton to Lucifer. Is this appropriate behavior?
Well, for a minute there, I thought I was back in ancient Rome. You know, it was thumbs up, thumbs down, give me Barabbas. It really did seem over the top to me, and while it certainly played very well inside the hall, that's really red meat for the base, to attract more voters to Donald Trump, I didn't think it was particularly effective. And in terms of being appropriate at this moment when we have so much going on in our country with all these horrible shootings, I think it's a little more incendiary than I would have liked to have seen.
Tim, just hardball politics?
It's harder than normal for a couple of reasons. Both of them are the high negativity of the candidates. In other words, there's not that much positive to sell about Donald Trump as compared to Mitt Romney, who had a great sort of personal story 4 years ago. And second, Hillary Clinton really is widely disliked and widely distrusted. If you had gone ahead and called Barack Obama a criminal 8 years ago, or even John Kerry 12 years ago, that would have sounded crazy. But Hillary is highly distrusted. People don't think she's honest, and they really don't like her. So that's why that's the reason, I think, why it's become so much more negative than in the past.
Melinda, a few people were offended when Donald Trump questioned Hillary Clinton's faith, and he said she's been in the public eye for years and years, and yet there's nothing out there. And George W. Bush's former speechwriter Michael Gerson wrote in the Washington Post that he says it is like watching a man insult a mirror.
Well, you know, what Donald Trump doesn't remember is when we first were getting to know Hillary Clinton on the public stage, she came in as a devout Methodist, something called the politics of meaning. So that's not how I remember that history. But yes, I take Donald Trump at his word that he is the Christian he purports to be, and she is too.
Tim, how do you think we'll see these attacks play out in the convention next week in Philadelphia? Will Democrats go for his throat?
I think Hillary Clinton has shown personally a willingness to attack Donald Trump in a way that a lot of presidential candidates sort of leave up to an attack dog. She takes it on herself. She's assigned Elizabeth Warren to be an attack dog because Warren has a very good skill at getting under Trump's skin, it seems.
And she has really come out and been quite vicious about it.
Yeah, and it's the same story, as I said before, that the high negatives of both of them, that Hillary's strongest point is that Donald Trump is her opponent. And I don't think she'll leave that weapon undrawn.
And what do you think about going forward to the next convention? You've covered a lot of these, Melinda. Okay, you've covered
I have.
A few.
It's true, back to 1988.
And I feel like this time in our country that it is much more divisive than ever. And do you expect to see more of the same?
Yes, I think this is going to be the dirtiest campaign I can remember. And we always say, we keep saying that, but they do keep getting more toxic.
All right, thank you. Melinda Hennenberger, thank you so much for joining us. Tim Carney, Washington Examiner. We will be here tomorrow for the closing day of the convention. It promises to be a big party, Brian, as Donald Trump takes to the stage for his final speech of the week. Back to you.
Great work from our team there. Lauren Ashburn, Paul Fifield, Catherine Zeltner, and of course, Jason Calvi. For our EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow for more coverage from the convention. Good night. God bless.